Welcome back, Foster Care Nation, to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey, the podcast. Today we're talking with Brian Haisch. Brian is a young man who spent the majority of his youth in foster care. He eventually aged out of the system, and if it had not been for his last placement out of over 20, he would have left the system without a solid foundation intact. And he tells us his story today about what caused him to show up in foster care, some of the troubles and the damage and the abuse that he experienced while he was in the system, and how that one family at the end helped him find his way out and become the man he is today.
Foster care and Unparalleled Journey!
Well, we'd like to talk about all things kid-related, whether it's foster kids, bio kids, adopted kids, step kids, or anything else. I think the information you'll learn here will be very valuable. We'd like to bring you guests who have either been foster kids themselves, lived with foster kids, or maybe even people who are helpers, like psychologists and caseworkers. If you have a story that you'd like to have highlighted on our show, please feel free to contact me at fostercareuj@gmail.com. We can chat and set up a time to do an interview. I'd love to be able to tell you your story. We're here to inspire you to become the best parent that you can be, whether that is a step parent or bio parent or foster or adoptive. What we really want to do is change the world for the better and leave it in a better place than we found it. Now on to the show. Welcome back to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey with Jason.
And Amanda.
Today we have Brian Haisch here with us. Brian is a guy I met in a dad's group that we were both in. And when I put out a question to see who had some insight into the life of a foster child, Brian messaged me. After our subsequent conversations, I realized that he had a whole lot of experience that he could bring to this conversation. From my wife and I's point of view, we've been foster parents for a lot of years. We've dealt with foster kids, we've dealt with adoption, we've dealt with a lot of those sorts of things, but neither one of us ever experienced foster care. Brian had that experience, and he's going to share it with us today. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing quite well.
Good deal. I know we talked a little bit earlier. You are a single guy, but dating a woman and you've got a 4-year-old daughter that is hers who just calls you daddy?
Yes.
Well, I'm just going to say we did the same thing when I was a lot younger, and I can have to applaud you for just taking on the role of dad and not making all those biological distinctions and making a big deal about whether or not that matters, because what kids need, as you probably well know, is a stable, structured family around them, people who care about them and love them. And I can see that you're doing that today, and I can only imagine that comes somewhere out of your soul for where you came from.
Yes, it sure did. It came out of, me not being stable through the foster care system and not having that reliability of a stable parent because I was moving all the time.
How old were you when you came into care?
I was 6 years old when I first came into care.
6 years old, wow. And you said you aged out of care?
Yes, I did. I aged out of care on November 15th of 2010.
Wow, that's almost like a day that's etched in your mind.
Yes.
Can you tell us about, what brought you into care to begin with?
So my dad was very physically abusive, and also he did different types of drugs when we were growing up. And so my sister had gone to the local police station where we were living at the time, which is Pasco Police Department, and reported him. And so CPS came and got us and took us into care. And some of the memory I have from that night is just being shook awake to get dressed and to get going.
That has to be shocking for a 6-year-old kid who didn't know what was happening.
Yes, it was very shocking. I had some anger issues because I didn't know what was going on. I just got thrust from my dad's home into foster care in the middle of the night.
So like asleep in your bed, woken up and saying, "You got to go."
I still play it over in my head, just thinking about everything I've gone through. And, I'm one of those people. I am a Christian. I thank God that I went through this experience because it has taught me so much that I know what to do, when I have kids of my own, even when with my girlfriend's kid, is I know what type of parent to be.
Did they give you time to get clothes, your stuffed animal, favorite blanket, anything like that?
They gave us a little bit of time just to get a few items in a little duffel bag, and that was about it. Then they took us from my dad's home, and that same night we went into our new foster home. And they were my foster parents off and on for the whole time I was in foster care. And I went to different ones. So.
Now you say did you have siblings?
Yes, I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My sister, Rhea, she was the one that went to the Pasco Police Department to report everything that was going on.
Were you guys able to stay together that night?
Yes, my brother Bobby and my brother David and my sister Nicole all stayed together. But my sister Rhea, she was not the perfect child, but she went to a different home, but we were able to see her even though she was not in the same house that we were.
And I understand. That's why I was asking, because sometimes I know nowadays they really try to keep siblings together, but that's not always possible, especially when there's more than just, 2 or 3. It's hard to find placement for 5 children.
Yes, it is.
Were you guys always able to stay together, or did you guys eventually get separated?
From age 6, when I got into foster care, up to it was about age 7, age 8. I went into different foster homes, just myself. My 2 brothers and my sister stayed at that house, but I went into different foster homes because of the fact that I was thrust into foster care at age 6, and I was still having those anger issues and not knowing what was going on and being able to express myself because it was a big deal.
That is a big deal for a 6-year-old. 6-year-olds aren't very good at expressing themselves normally without the trauma. I can only imagine how that trauma would make you go inside and try and kind of hide who you are because of the fear that's associated with that.
Yes, that was very traumatic, and like I said, it's something that I've learned from, and I thank God that I went through the experience of being able to learn from what I shouldn't do.
So how many houses were you in total? How many different placements were you a part of?
So I don't have the actual numbers, so it was probably about 20 or more. It was when I was with the first foster home, I went from them to a different home, and I would stay with those homes for about 6 months at total. Then I would be moved again to a different home. I went from some of the area that we live in. I went from Kennewick to Pasco to Richland to West Richland to Burbank to Findlay to Benton City to I lived in a group home in Idaho, Lewiston, Idaho, for about a year because of everything.
Oh, wow.
Out of all of those placements, were any of those kinship placements like family, or was each time a new stranger?
Each time it was a new stranger. So a little bit about when I first came into foster care. My mom had the chance of getting us back, but she didn't want to go through all of the stuff that the state wanted her to go through. So we went to different homes, all new people, people I didn't know, and so it was very strange because you get used to someone after a few months of living with them that you get comfortable with calling them mom and dad, but then after 6 months, okay, here's another person.
That's got to be really hard to build trust and relationships.
Yes, it has been. I still have issues with it, but I'm working past that because of the fact that the last family that I lived with had me the longest time. They had me for 4 years, which I appreciate them to this day, and I still go see them to this day, and they're part of my life.
Wow, 4 years. Now, was there a reason why adoption wasn't an option?
I don't know about that. They never told me if I was up for adoption or what the situation with that was. So
I see. So your parents probably, or not probably, but maybe could have still had their rights.
yes.
But still, I mean, the longest placement was 4 years. That's really kind of sad that you guys had to move around that much.
Yeah, it totally messed with me because even now as an adult, I still have issues with the moving around because I, grew up from age 6 to age 18, the fact that I was moving every 6 months. So I always keep a duffel bag ready to go because of the fact that that's what I grew up with.
Still today you do that?
Yes, still today I do that.
Wow.
That speaks volumes to what the effects of childhood really has on our adulthood.
Yes, it does.
What other ways do you think that having been placed in so many different homes and having had the experience you did has changed you as the man you are today?
It's definitely taught me, because of the fact that I was so young, taught me how to fight for myself, taught me how to speak up for myself and be able to voice what I want done.
So now, you aged out of the foster care system. What did that look like? Was it just like on your 18th birthday? Was it like, okay, here's your duffel bag, see you later? I mean, what did that look like?
So when I aged out of foster care, like I said, I aged out November 15th, 2010. I went in front of the court because I still had to go to the court system every 3 months, and talk with the judge. But when that time finally came, I went in front of the judge, and he said, well, it's been a pleasure, being able to see you grow up. It's, my pleasure to have you go on to your own life. And so I went in front of him, then I went in front of the DCFS, and they sat me down, asked me, what's going to happen as soon as I turn 18, where am I going to be going? What they taught me a little bit of things of what I need to know when I do get out care.
I mean, did you have any way of supporting yourself? Did you have a job? Had you finished school?
I was in the middle of finishing high school, so in 2010 I was in my senior year, just barely began my senior year of high school, and I was going to school finishing that on my own. And so I went every day to school. I just kept on going because I knew that the education was such a important thing.
Wow, so here you are. You're on your own. You're trying to finish high school. You've got a job. Where did you stay?
So when I got out of care, I went from living in foster care. My sister had gotten out of care in 2005, 2006. And so she had been living up in Seattle with her husband. They got married in 2008. And so she had come down saying that she'd take me to get me on my feet, which I really appreciated. The fact that she was there for me, even though, she's been out of care so long.
So how much older was your sister than you?
She is about 7 years older than me.
Okay, so she'd already been through that. Now, were any of your other siblings adopted out?
No, they were not.
Wow.
They all stayed in foster care the whole time till they aged out also.
Wow. That sounds like a real disservice the state has done because, and don't get me wrong, I don't blame the state for this necessarily all the time because there's a lot they didn't know and a lot they're still learning. But a lot of times the system itself, just due to its own inadequacy, can really fail a kid and not set them up for success, because the truth is that the statistics tell us that most kids who end up leaving care without a support system around them will end up going out into the world and going back into state custody, usually on a whole different level, though.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. When I lived with my sister, we still had that I guess you can call it anger against each other because of the fact that I went through so many foster parents, and I would go back to the first foster home, every so often, but it wasn't the actual physical, brother, sister relationship that normal people have. I would see them every once in a while, and so when she had me move in with her, it was very rocky, and so I came back and I lived on my own. I actually got an apartment because I had gotten a job and was successful. But even after that, I got laid off from my job, and so then I was homeless for about 3 years because of that.
Wow. That's a statistic right there. The number of kids who end up homeless or in the prison system after being in foster care the numbers are just super high. What do you think could have been done to help you be able to transition into a place where you had more of a chance to succeed and not have those same risk factors?
I think just from my experience is that I think the foster care system could have done, if it was 6 months or 7 months in advance before you aged out, they could have sat you down, had some classes that you would go through, through money management, keeping a job, even doing a resume or even looking for an apartment.
You say all that, and back in actually long before you left foster care, I was leaving the military. And when I got out of the military, they did exactly that for us. They had a whole transition period where you went and sat for a week of classes on just exactly those things. They would help you build a resume and help you look at getting housing secured and job. Well, they'd already trained you how to be a good employee. The Army has a way of doing that. Yes. But yeah, they took the time to really transition you out of that. And I can see that being very helpful, especially for a young man who hasn't had that experience of permanency in their life, because that's the big thing. That's one of the big buzzwords in foster care is permanency. we talk about a lot. It doesn't sound like you experienced a lot of permanency. What would you say about that?
No, I didn't experience a lot of permanency. It was, like I said, it was every 6 months I would move. But the one person or the two people that I give all my love to and all my gratitude for is my last foster parents, Laura and Everett. They were the ones that I lived with for 4 years, and they, took me in. They showed me what love was, and they just were there for me all those years. And even to this day, there's still that connection with them, even though it's been almost 10 years since I've been out of foster care. It's still there that I can go over and have dinners with them, and we have holidays together.
And I can only imagine, as a young man, a free dinner here and there is always a welcome invitation.
Oh, yes, it is.
That's just wonderful that you were able to make that connection. Finally, it's a shame that it took so long for you and Care to find a place to make that connection. What is it about them, do you think, that made that connection work between you and your last set of foster parents?
Just touching base on what you just said. My dad, he was a Marine in the Vietnam War.
I want to throw a plug in real quick for my buddy John Williams. John Williams helps lead the organization Life That Counts. He also happens to have a podcast called Life That Counts. Go check him out. They are a nonprofit, so let's be honest, we all know how they work. They need help from the community supporting them while they support our community. So go check him out at lifethatcounts.org or on YouTube or on any of his socials at Life That Counts. Now, back to the show.
And so I think he knew how to structure me because of the fact of my behavior issues. Because I didn't know what was going on, so I was always angry. He knew how to take that and just mold me that I was a better person and better, had better attitude.
The Marine Corps has a way of teaching kids that. Not knowing what he did in Vietnam, but most of the guys who came back from Vietnam came back with their own level of traumas. We call it PTSD today. Back then, they didn't really have a name. I think maybe they called it shell-shocked at one point and a few other things. But PTSD was a real part of that. I can only imagine that you probably suffered from a significant amount of that same PTSD from the traumas you experienced in Care. Do you think his experiences helped you be able to connect with him better?
Yes, I do, because he went through a lot. And that's the thing, even though he didn't like talking about it, me and him would sit down and we'd talk. He would tell me things that happened, what he had to do, and it was just allowing me to be able to open up and tell him some of the stuff that I went through my foster care, and just be able to share it. Felt good that I had someone that I know could listen.
Wow, that's a huge piece right there. Having somebody who can connect with your trauma, that's something that we don't do well in our society. I think it's easy to get online and just berate somebody and tell them how much of an idiot they are, or how stupid they are, their opinion is, and talk down to them. And we rarely take the time to sit and listen to somebody else tell their story, especially in a way that's productive. And it sounds like you had somebody in your life who was willing to do that for you and help you really connect with that piece of trauma and see that you had a way out of it.
Yes. And that's the things that, like I told you, I'm kind of nervous about doing this is because I've never really told anybody, but being able to talk with my foster dad and to tell him that, it just, allows me to tell more people and to be more open about it. Because, yeah, it is a traumatic event that I went through, but, I've learned so much from that traumatic event that it's taught me how to be a better adult, to be a better father, to um, trust more people, even though I still have those issues, but it's not as bad from when I was a kid.
Well, let's just assume that somewhere along the way, the great Google algorithm is going to share this episode with some young man who's, 18, 20 years old and just stepping out of a similar situation. What do you think the most important thing that they need to hear is that you learned over time?
The most important thing is that always stand up for yourself. Even if you feel like no one's standing there, there is someone there. I, for the longest time, did not feel that someone was standing up for me. But me standing up for myself, then meeting Everett and Gloria, that made me feel loved. That made me feel everything. You're going to have those relationships that you were in care with, some of the foster parents that you go back to this day and that you go see. They're always going to be there.
Did you make any other connections with any of the other foster parents you were with?
Not really. I went, like I said, it was barely 6 months at most, with those houses. So there's some people that I go see, but it's not a strong connection. It's a, hey, how you doing? Okay, I'll see you later. It's more of a friend relationship. It's not like a mom and dad relationship.
We talked recently with a guy, Barry Farmer. He's a guy on a nationally syndicated morning show, and he's adopted 3 boys, I want to say. And that's one of the things that we were talking about is how important those mentorship placements are, not placements, how important the mentorship is that you can receive from somebody who doesn't necessarily even need to be a foster parent, just somebody in your life who can really speak into your world, into your trauma and your struggles. Did you have any good mentors growing up, maybe a teacher or somebody like that, somebody from school or church?
Yeah, I had a lot of good teachers going through school. One of them is Miss Denoyer. She was one of my English teachers, and we connected because that's one thing that I loved was English. And so we connected through the different movies like To Kill a Mockingbird or The Outsider, some movies like that. We were able to talk about that and go beyond just the actual schoolwork. We were talking through everything.
Those connections seem to be really key. My own friend group involves a couple people who had those relationships in with some of my friends and through my dad, and his ability to speak into young men's life. He was one of those guys who was just specifically talented to speak to young men. Me, on the other hand, you give me a 3-year-old, and buddy, we're gonna have a good time. I may look like a big, hairy, scary, brown-looking dude with a big beard and an angry face half the time, but I'm going to tell you, a 3-year-old can see right through it. And we just tend to have a good time. And those are the places where I make a lot of great connections with kids. But just wherever you're at in your life, it's amazing the difference you can have when you reach out and just mentor a kid who needs something that they're not getting at home. And you never know what that is. I mean, did the people around you know what your situation was like, your friends at school?
Some of them did. I had some friends, I'm not going to say their last names, but Brandon and Caleb, they were my friends since middle school. They knew every single thing about me, what I went through, and they were the ones that we went through 6th grade all the way up to graduating, and we were so close that they knew everything. They knew what I was going through. They knew even when my grandma died in 2010 that they were there for me, even though I was still at school. I was a total mess. And they're the ones that I thank for being there and supporting me.
It sounds to me like the group of people who've come around you to really choose to be part of that mentorship have made a huge impact in your life.
Yes, they have.
Have you found a way to reach out towards any other kids in your world at this point in your life to where you can give that back to anybody?
I've actually met a few foster kids even when I was aging out. I told them, always keep your head up. Always, remember that people do love you. And that's the thing. When I was in foster care, there was some of the homes that I went to that they weren't the greatest of homes. They actually had to lose their license because of how they treated the foster kids. But the fact is that those kids that were younger than me looked up to me to be their voice.
Wow, that's a heavy responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also an incredible honor to be able to do that for someone else.
Yes, it was an honor, just to be able to be their voice and tell the foster care system what these homes are doing, and just the foster care system. We had this thing called respite care. So every other weekend or once a month, we would go to a different foster home to give our foster home break from us. And so there were some of them that I went to, like I just mentioned, that I had gotten their license taken away because of how they treated the foster kids.
After being in the system yourself, would or have you ever considered becoming a foster parent?
I've thought about it, but right now I'm still trying to work on myself. I'm becoming more outgoing and more being able to express everything. So that's why I haven't made the jump on that.
And I can understand that. You do need to take care of yourself first. I just didn't know if that was somewhere in your thoughts, as you continue down your path to becoming healthier. I just didn't know if that was something on your radar, because I know from just talking to different people, and this is what me and Jason do, is talk to different people that have been in the situation. That's usually a lot of times that's a driving force as to why some people decide to become foster parents, is from their experiences. So I didn't know if that was something that, you had thought about, if it was on your radar.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why, like I said, I'm dating this girl that has a daughter, not biologically by me, but by someone else. It's the fact that I want to be there for someone, even if, something's happened in the past with the mom or the dad. I want to be there to show them love, because I didn't get that till the last 4 years of my life in foster care.
Right. Now you said you're working on yourself and trying to take care of yourself. Are you doing therapy, or have you found some groups that would be helpful? Anything that you could maybe share with somebody out there who's listening that may be going through a similar situation?
Yeah, I've gone to therapy, and it's always good. When I was younger, I thought, therapists are a joke. They can't help me. But me being able to go see a therapist now and talk to them and express all the feelings that I bottled up, it's helping me become, more open. And that's why I'm currently working on a book to tell my story about foster care. And that's why I'm also doing this podcast, is because of the fact that I want to help anybody that I can help that feels like they don't have a voice.
That's really neat. That's awesome. Do you have a title for this book yet?
So my book's title is My Journey. It's just a little biography, I guess you can call it, about, my birth, some of the chapters, my travels, my experience, some of my education that I went through. So.
Now, you talked about your dad being the reason why you removed from the home, but we really didn't talk about your mom at all. Was your mom really involved in the picture, or what was the story with her?
So my mom and my dad, they had divorced when my mom was pregnant with me. So my mom, she, at 3 days old, put me on my dad's doorstep and said, okay, here you go. Here's your issue. So we would see her once in a while, but it wouldn't be the mother-son bond that, that's normal. It's, to this day I go over and I still see her, but it doesn't feel like I'm actually there.
Yeah, I can only imagine that must really have shaped a lot of your personal views about yourself and your self-worth when you hear the story as a kid about your mom dropping you off on your dad's doorstep and calling you his problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is I still go over that in my head. I'm still asking myself, what did I do? Why did I get dropped off on my dad's doorsteps? Why can't I, be enough? But that's why I'm trying to work on things with my mom, but it's still a hard thing for her to deal with, and so we haven't really been in her relationship since age 6 when we got into care. I went and saw her one time during when I was in foster care, but foster care didn't really allow that because of the situation. So they said I'd have to wait till I was 18, and so that's when I started seeing her again and talking with her. And so.
Wow, you mentioned that one question, and I see this as a common thread through almost every child with trauma's life, and that's that question that says, "Why couldn't I be enough?" I think social psychology now says pretty clearly that most kids ask themselves that question when they go through trauma. Is that something that you've had much time to really think on and consider the fact that maybe sometimes you're not the one who's supposed to be enough for somebody else's struggles?
Yeah, I've actually thought about that, and like with my mom's situation, maybe at the time she wasn't ready, to raise a newborn. Maybe she wasn't ready to have us full time, to take us out of foster care. But I, to this day, don't blame her anymore. I forgave her. I told her straight to her face. I was like, okay, I understand what you did. I remember watching you run out of the courtroom when I was 6 years old. I forgive you all that. I still love you to this day, even though you weren't the actual mother that I pictured. I still have that love for you because you gave birth to me and you were my mom.
Wow, that takes a lot, to forgive someone for hurting you like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that speaks volumes as to how far you have come and getting yourself some help and some acceptance. Because too often we as people just can't forgive. Sometimes it's just too hard, especially when someone has treated you that way. Because children, no matter what, children, they love their parents, they love their mom, they love their father. It doesn't matter if they were talked badly to, if they were abused and beaten. Those children still love their parents because that's your mom, that's your dad. And so to be able to go back and say, I forgive you, I mean, that's truly huge, and I hope you give yourself some credit for that.
I do. I give myself a lot of credit for that, because that, for the longest time, weighed me down, because I couldn't see her, without feeling anger. And so when I finally said, okay, Mom, everything happened when I was 6 years old to now, I totally forgive you. It was like a huge weight off my shoulder, because of the fact that I let go of all that hurt and that anger and all that distrust that I had.
Well, I think that forgiveness piece is something that you can't let go of that, because of when you know how powerful forgiveness is, and you understand that you're never saying that's okay. You're saying, I choose to forgive you. And your personal power tends to lie on the other side of that forgiveness. So that's huge. Do you think that had a lot to do with the anger issues you had as a young kid? Was it anger directed towards your mother, or? Yeah.
I believe it was. It was directed towards my mother and the situation with my father, and also with me being thrust into foster care, because I didn't know what's going on. I would cry. I would feel anger. I'd act out. And I didn't know as a child how to express my feelings, And so when I got to my teens, I was able to express that to my friends and to express it to some of my teachers that would listen to me. Then I was able to meet Gloria and Everett, and I was able to finally open up and express everything. And so that's why it made me realize, okay, I need to go to my mom, tell her, okay, I forgive you.
Oh, well, mad props to you for being able to get to that point, because I know plenty of grown men with a lot more years on their life than what you've got now, because according to my math, that puts you at about 27. Am I right? Okay, yeah. Yes. So yeah, you're miles ahead of men that I know that are in their 40s and 50s and even 60s in learning how to forgive someone else for something and finding your way through that. So I just, give yourself that credit and know that your greatness lands on the other side of forgiveness. And that's a hard lesson to learn, but we all have to learn it eventually, or we spend our whole life being angry. So has that anger been something that the anger you experienced as a child, is that something that has seemed to resolve itself since you've been able to get through that?
I've had to go, I guess, through anger management, because of the fact that I wasn't expressing it properly. But some of those classes has also taught me how to express it, and what to deal with it.
Wow, it sounds like you came through a really tough time as a kid, and you've come out the other end, maybe not somebody who has a rosy story to tell, but somebody who has a powerful story to tell. And I would imagine you're probably well on your way to influencing a number of kids in the next generation, because you have the ability to talk to people who have been through some of those same traumas, an ability that I don't have, that no one else does. And so, I'm really glad that we were able to get together today so that you can tell the story to the world and let them know that there is hope on the other side of forgiveness.
Yes, it was so nice to actually do this on a podcast, because, like I said, I've told some of my friends, I've told some of I told my last foster family, but nothing national like this, nothing big time like this. So it's releasing everything that I've printed up.
But yeah, because now that your story is out there, it's out there for the world to hear. Somebody else is going to listen to it. They're going to relate to it. Hopefully it will help them. But at the same time, I have found by telling some of my stories, because I didn't have a sunshine and rosy childhood myself, I have found that there's a lot of healing in telling my story. And not only with that healing, there's a lot of freedom that comes along with that too. And a lot of weight that comes off of my shoulders when I share my story and my experiences. So I hope that this platform has given you that today.
Yes, it sure has, and I appreciate you guys for having me on here. It means everything to me that I'm able to inspire someone else, that, I can tell them through this that, don't ever give up. Don't ever give up on yourself. Don't ever, when I was a kid, this is one big thing that I did when I was a kid. I always thought about committing suicide because I always thought I was enough. But the fact that I'm able to share my story and to better myself. I mean, I went from getting out of foster care to I now own a car. I have a steady job. I have a house. I have, a girlfriend. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I have all that. There may be bumps in the road, but you will get through that.
Absolutely. You're telling the world that you are enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. You are enough. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story with us, feeling like you're able to do that, and choosing us and allowing us to be able to sit here and listen to you today.
Yes, thank you once again for having me. It's a wonderful thing. I just want to reach to everybody that they don't feel enough. So,
well, thank you so much for all your time today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, you guys too.
Brian shared with us before the interview that this was the first time he'd had an opportunity to tell his whole story in one place at one time to an audience. I hope you were able to gain some wisdom from his experience. If you feel yourself compelled to look into foster care yourself, feel free to shoot us a message and we'll help you in any way we can. Otherwise, contact your local children's division or DCFS or DIFUS or whatever it is in your area. Every state calls it something else. If you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to contact us at fostercareuj@gmail.com. Also, don't forget that we have a Patreon link if you'd like to support us. It's patreon.com/fostercarenation. Because, guys, really, like I've shared before, I have one pool, I have a lot of kids, and they don't get out of it as often as I think they should. I think they're leaving something behind. I need more chlorine. Please send chlorine tablets. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to us at fostercarenation.com. We have a contact us link there. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you guys next week. We put up new uploads every Friday, so be watching for it. Reach down and hit the subscribe button in your podcast player. And if you're on iTunes or Apple Play, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps the show get seen. We appreciate your time. We'll see you soon.